What you want?
Alright, so let's go over some of the basic nuts and bolts to paper mache. If you're new to paper mache, hopefully this will help you out and be some useful information for you. Anyway, today, really, this video, we're just going to talk about paper and the different materials that you can use for paper mache. Paper mache is a very versatile medium form to use. I mean, it's really up to interpretation of the person or artist who's doing the mache work, because you're not just limited to paper itself as most people think about. Generally, when you think about paper mache, you think about water and flour for a mixture, and then you think about newspaper or paper strips being put on something. But there's so many different things and so many different materials that you can actually use with your mache paste to get different textures, to get different strength qualities. There's just lots of different things that we can incorporate into it. But in this video, we'll go over some of the first basics, and I'll talk about some of these other things that you can use and that some people do. Of course, what everybody thinks about standard is newspaper, newsprint. Newsprint's fairly cheap. A lot of people get newspaper delivered to their door every day. Some don't. I don't. It's every Sunday I get a paper. However, generally you can go to different places like Lions Clubs and things like that, and they may have a recycle bin where newspapers are taken to. If you have a relationship with someone within that group, a lot of times you can pick up some of that paper from them for free. You can go down and talk to any of your local news companies, newspaper print companies, and a lot of times you can get a few of the old prints from them as well. But newspaper is everywhere, newsprint's everywhere, it's easy to get, and this is what most people use. Now, in your newsprint, you'll have ads, things like this. We see here, these are full of color, and they're shiny. Like this, it's got kind of a waxy feel to it. This really isn't good for the paper mache process. It's harder for your paste to penetrate this and really stick to it. But this is great for stuffing the inside of an armature or building up and bulking things. So don't just throw this stuff away. Keep this to the side, and you're going to want to use this to stuff your armatures or add bulk to things. So remember, keep this around, use it for stuffing, but it's not really any good for the mache itself. Another thing that's good that people use, I use it as well, is a phone book. The paper in this phone book is very, very light. It tears very easy. It soaks up paper mache paste. Excellent. I mean, it just really soaks it up and apply it down. You can really get this stuff to lay down nice and flat. It tears very easy as well. The only thing is this is so thin that if you're just going to use this as your paper medium, you're going to have to do several layers to build up strength using pages from a phone book. It does work. I do use it, but I usually use it as in between layers. So I see a lot of people have questions or they have problems when they're doing their mache. They forget how many layers they've got, or they're not sure if they covered the whole thing around. And what I'll do a lot of times is I'll do strip mache with the newspaper like this. I'll get it to dry out, and then I'll do another layer with phone book print like this. And because it's yellow, now when I'm going back over it, it's a completely different color. So I can really make sure that I've got the entire thing covered once again. So it really helps out with you in your layers, trying to make sure you get the whole thing covered. Besides paper, I mean, there's so many other things that can be used. You can use You can use toilet paper. I use toilet paper in a lot of my paper mache clay recipes. It breaks down very easy, but toilet paper too. You can apply it down, apply paste to it, it'll work. You can also use toilet paper. It's great for creating different effects on your projects. Like my pumpkins, you can just simply take some of this, lay it on, scrunch it up with a paintbrush, load it down with paper mache paste, and you can create great vines over the top of your pumpkin to add extra texture. You can do it with clay too, but with this you can do it the same way, and it's just as quick, and it leaves a nice wrinkled effect to it, and you don't have to go back in and sculpt out your woody grain for your veins. It just does it naturally. You can use toilet paper. You can also use, this is just brown craft paper. This is another one that's pretty thick. You've got to really let this soak in, but when it soaks in, you apply it. It's very strong as well. As a layer, you can use it building up layers, or you can use it as a final skinning coat. I see a lot of people who use it as a skinning coat. It works well. You can also use paper towels. I know a lot of people use Viva, that's right, Viva paper towels. It's a white paper towel. Generally doesn't have any pattern on it. This is a shop towel. Well, it's considered a shop towel to use out in the garage. I picked these things up in a big bundle at like Sam's. It's relatively cheap. I like it because it has no pattern to it, so you don't have to worry about little flowery things on it when you're macheing. It's pretty uniform, and it really soaks up your mache paste. Now the thing about this, when you're using this, it soaks up a lot of paste. So you'll go through a lot more paste using paper towel like this than you will newsprint or foam book print. Just keep that in mind. You'll go through the paste much faster. But when this dries, it is very, very sturdy, and it's very, very strong. It takes a little bit longer for this to dry, but once this dries out, it is extremely strong. I use this too in between coats as well. I'll do a layer of newsprint. Sometimes I'll do a layer of paper towel, and I'll go back with another layer of newsprint as well. And then an added benefit of paper towel, if you are machining something that you've built in armature, it's got a lot of curves, or like around the nose and maybe around on the face, like a nose or eyes or different things like that. When you lay the paper towel down and you got it tore up, it bends and smooths out better. Where if you're using newsprint, a lot of times when you're trying to pull it around a curl or a curve, it'll want to wrinkle on you and make some different kinks and wrinkles in it. Now, if your project you're working on doesn't matter about the kinks and wrinkles, it's fine. But if you're looking for a smooth finish on it, you can use this. This also works good as like a final skinning layer. If you're making a zombie, or if you're doing just anything, you can lay this down. It smooths out nice, and it creates a good finished skinning layer as well. Besides paper, you can use cloth, which has been dubbed cloth mache. This cloth here I picked up at a hobby store. It's very, very thin. It's like a t-shirt style material. This stuff is great as well because when it dries very, very hard. A lot of the times you can get away with just one layer of this if you're draping it over something, and when it dries, it is very strong. I make some little reapers for the inside of the house with this stuff. I just love it. It's easy to use. You just cut it up or tear it up, dip it into your mache paste, really let it saturate all the way through, and let these fibers soak up the mache paste. Wring out your extra and then apply it to whatever your project is. Again, you can use this in between stages too. If you want your particular project to be strong, you can go newsprint, and then you can do a layer of cloth mache after that, and then after your cloth mache dries, you can come back over with more newspaper or paper towels or whatever. If you do that, you'll create a very, very strong base to whatever you're working on. So we can use cloth. Another thing that not a lot of people use, but I do, I like it as well, you can use cotton balls. Cotton balls are great when you're corpsing things, maybe a skeleton, maybe a pumpkin, or you just want to add gunk or different textures. It really soaks up the mache paste as well. It adds a great texture. You'll just unroll your cotton ball, and then you can either dip this down into the mache paste and bring it out and apply it to the structure you're working on, or you can brush some paste onto the project you're working on, place this on it, and then you can brush your paste back over the top of this as well. It does shrink down quite a bit, but it makes great textures and it makes some cool effects. In the pumpkins I do, I use this cotton ball to create the pumpkin goop or guts or whatever you want to call it on the inside of the mouths of my pumpkins. I really like this. I also use this making my ground breakers to get a great corpse skin effect from my ground breakers. Really like cotton balls as well. Really, guys, you know, that's pretty much the basis to most of it. You can use newsprint, you can use craft paper, you can use paper towels, you can use toilet paper, you can use cloth, you can use cotton balls. Almost anything that'll soak up paper mache paste you can use. I mean, you can use tissue paper as well. I've used it as a final coating on different things to create a wrinkle texture. The spell book that I did, I final coated it with tissue paper, and it made a great leathery texture on the top of the spell book. So whatever you can think of, almost, and any ideas that you have, it's just really, like I said before, it's up to interpretation. You can use a variety of materials with paper mache, and I think that's really why I like it so much. It's very versatile, and you can do a lot of different things with it. Before we go out of this, or before I close this up, talking about the different papers and the papers that we can use, or you can use, and on newsprint or this foam book print, you know, there's a proper way to really tear paper. You want to tear it, what they say, with the grain. You know, by looking at it, I can't really tell you what the correct way to tear it is, but it's very easy to figure out. If you grab your paper and see how this is just kind of tore off at an angle like this, it didn't follow straight down, so it didn't get a good tear, and basically that's kind of against the grain, I would say. So you're just going to simply turn your paper over and tear it the other direction. When I tore it the other direction, you get a great straight tear. You can come straight down, you can make them wide, you can make them thin. It just has better control. So if you're ever tearing your paper and you're realizing you're having problems, you try to get a straight tear and it's doing some of this stuff on you, remember, oh, this must be the wrong way. Just turn your paper over and give it a tear, and then you'll get good straight tears with it. All the paper works that way in newsprint as well. Most newsprint, at least the newsprint I get, when you get your newsprint, it's folded over, and generally it's generally the best way to know to tear it is on the fold right here. If you tear from the fold down, that's with the grain. If you try to tear it this other way, it's going to go all choppy on you. So most of your newsprint, always remember the natural fold they have in there. Tear from the fold down, and that's just with the grain, and it gives you a good tear every single time. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys out that are new to mache and we're kind of wondering the different things you could use, the different types of paper. I'm sure there's some things that I may have missed that you can still use, but these are the main paper products, or the main things I use for my strip mache and my mache. You'll see in different projects that I utilize pretty much every one of these in one way or another, or one form and another, and it's great. They all have their benefits, and they all have their little hiccups and problems too, but that's just the nature of it. So really, that's what it takes. Remember, newsprint's great. Anything glossy with a lot of pictures on it isn't very good. Your foam book print's great too, except it's weak because it's thinner, so it requires more layers if you're going to use that. Paper towels do good as well, but also they soak up a lot more mache paste, so you go through much more mache paste than you would. Cloth is great, but like paper towels, it takes up a lot of paste too. Anyway, you know, there's several things you can do with the paste and several things you can do with the paper. And if you guys had questions, I hope this answers some of those questions. And if you have more questions on it, hit me up, let me know, and I'll be glad to answer your questions for you.